In a quiet southern town, surrounded by fields of green and the echoes of history, the pace of life moved slowly. Here, where traditions were passed down like family heirlooms, change was often unwelcome, and progress was a word met with skepticism. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. Yet, beneath the surface of polite smiles and neighborly waves, there existed an undercurrent of prejudice that had lingered for generations. Marcus Williams, a 17-year-old high school senior, was a shining example of what hard work and determination could achieve. His days were filled with academics, extracurriculars, and part-time tutoring to help support his single mother. His weekends, spent volunteering at the community center, teaching math to younger kids, and helping the elderly with their errands. He wasn't just a good kid, he was exceptional. But in this town, even exceptional wasn't always enough. On a warm summer evening, Marcus had just finished a tutoring session with his neighbor's son. He walked into the local convenience store to grab a snack before heading home. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. Inside Teehee store, the cool air was a welcome relief from the sticky heat outside. Marcus greeted the cashier with his usual politeness and wandered to the snack aisle. As Marcus reached for a bag of chips, the bell above the door jingled. He barely noticed until a loud, gruff voice broke the stillness. "Don't move!" someone yelled. Marcus turned slowly to see a man wearing a dark hoodie and brandishing a gun. The cashier froze in terror, his hands raised as the man demanded money from the register. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He stepped back instinctively, trying to make himself as small and invisible as possible. The robber grabbed a handful of cash, stuffed it into a bag, and bolted out the door. The entire ordeal lasted less than 2 minutes, but for Marcus it felt like an eternity. What do you think about Dennis so far? Share your thought on comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like. Moments later, the sound of sirens filled the air. Marcus stood rooted in place, still processing what had just happened. When the police burst into the store, their eyes immediately locked onto him. The cashier, still shaken, pointed toward Marcus, perhaps out of confusion or fear. Despite his protests, the officers handcuffed him and led him outside. "I didn't do anything," Marcus exclaimed, his voice trembling. "I was just buying snacks." But his words fell on deaf ears. To the officers, Marcus fit the description of the suspect, a young black male in the vicinity of the crime. They didn't ask questions. They didn't review the security footage, which was conveniently out of order. Marcus's fate was sealed in their minds before he even stepped into the patrol car. At the police station, Marcus sat in a cold, sterile room, his hands trembling as he tried to explain what had happened. His mother, Denise, arrived hours later, her face a mask of worry and anger. She demanded to see her son, but the officers were dismissive, their tone condescending. "Ma'am, your son was at the scene of the crime," one officer said. "We have a witness who placed him there." Denise's voice shook as she replied, "Of course he was there. He was buying snacks. That doesn't make him a criminal." Her words did little to sway them. Marcus was charged with armed robbery, a crime that carried a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. The news spread quickly through the town, and opinions were divided. Some who knew Marcus rallied behind him, vouching for his character. Others, swayed by prejudice and sensational headlines, were quick to assume his guilt. The trial began just 2 weeks later, moving at a pace that left Marcus and his mother little time to prepare. His lawyer, Sarah Langston, was fresh out of law school, but passionate about justice. She pored over the case day and night, determined to prove Marcus's innocence. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Judge Harper, a man known for his tough-on-crime stance, presided over the case. His reputation was a double-edged sword. While some admired his no-nonsense approach, others whispered about his history of biased rulings. The prosecution's case was weak, relying solely on circumstantial evidence and the cashier's vague testimony. The defense presented Marcus's spotless record, his alibi, and the complete lack of physical evidence tying him to the crime. Sarah's arguments were compelling, but Harper's expression remained unreadable. During her closing statement, Sarah addressed the jury directly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "Marcus Williams is not a criminal. He is a young man with dreams, aspirations, and a heart full of hope. The evidence, or lack thereof, proves his innocence. To convict him would not only be a miscarriage of justice, but a stain on our community's conscience." Despite her efforts, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Harper, with a stern expression, delivered the sentence: 10 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Marcus's mother let out a cry that echoed through the chamber. Marcus himself sat in stunned silence, his dreams shattered in an instant. As he was led away, he turned to Sarah, who whispered, "I won't stop fighting for you, I promise." Back at home, Denise stared at the empty chair at their kitchen table, her heart breaking for her son. Meanwhile, Judge Harper returned to his chambers, feeling no remorse for the decision he had made. To him, Marcus was just another case, another statistic. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, Judge Harper received an unexpected visitor, Charles Williams, Marcus's estranged father and a respected federal judge. Charles had been absent for much of Marcus's life, but when he heard about the trial, he dropped everything to confront the man who had sentenced his son. Charles's words were sharp and unrelenting. "You sentenced an innocent boy based on your biases, Harper. You didn't care about the evidence or the truth. You saw his skin color and decided his fate before he even walked into your courtroom." Harper tried to defend himself, but Charles cut him off. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make you face what you've done. Because if you don't, I will." That night, Harper couldn't sleep. Charles's words haunted him, forcing him to confront the prejudices he had spent a lifetime denying. The next morning, Harper announced that he was reopening Marcus's case, citing the need for a thorough review of the evidence. In a packed courtroom, Harper overturned the verdict. "I find that there is insufficient evidence to convict Marcus Williams," he declared. "All charges are dropped." The room erupted in applause. Marcus and his mother embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Harper stepped down from the bench, a changed man. He knew his apology could never undo the pain he had caused, but he vowed to spend the rest of his career fighting the very prejudices that had led him astray. Marcus went on to fulfill his dreams, becoming an engineer and an advocate for justice reform. His story became a symbol of hope and the power of second chances, proving that even in the darkest moments, there is always a path toward the light. Share your thought in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I pour my heart into crafting stories like this for you, and your support is the one helps me keep going. I appreciate having you on this journey,